students welcome development that protects our environment. This citizen text amendment does that by bolstering protections and regulations regarding forestry and trees in Kent County. We also hope that you take into consideration the Student Government Association's written testimony, the testimony of one of our student organizations, the Washington College Democrats, and the nearly 500 signatures submitted through the Shore Rivers petition. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Chip McLeod. I'm a local attorney. And I wanted to speak, I wanted to clarify a comment made about the ordinance and what was made available for public review. And you went through the Article 3 uses. And I think it was said that there was no substantive changes, that all the black line changes are reflecting reformatting. I mean, can I get clarification on that? That's the case? So when we review, so looking at the black line of the zoning ordinance now, all the changes are stylistic and formatting and clarifying. They're not substantive.
There were,
I mean, definitionally and stuff.
there weren't definitions. Sorry, I don't know if anybody else is speaking at this time. There were not definition changes. There were some, like I said, that were combined when they were very similar or identical. Maybe it was townhouses with a space between town and houses, and there was townhouses with no space in between. There were other times that uses were removed if they weren't included anywhere, or maybe they were only included in the IV critical area, the Intense Village Critical Area District, which was being removed. So there were some cases where some were removed. You will be able to see that in the red line version. But there was not substantial change to what uses are available, or there were not new uses invented, unless those were just a word change, and were included in the same districts that they were normally allowed in.
And Nolan, if I might add some clarification. So there were changes of substance that were made earlier in discussions. Those were reviewed in September. So things like adaptive reuse of historic structures being a permitted use. Were there some other things?
And adaptive reuses kind of went back to where it was. So
Please, Carl.
no, it was not our intent. Nolan and I were the ones who most carefully went through the uses. And as far as I know, there were no substantive changes. There were even a couple of times where there were some very similar uses, and we made the decision that it needed further review, and they're both still in there. So
It may, I'm not trying to create more work, but I know I, for one, have been following this process from the get-go. And we've provided comments on behalf of different clients, and I know others have been following it. I will profess, I'm finding it difficult to track what is being proposed, what the task force has actually said, you know what, this is something we want to move forward, or this is something, and to the prior speaker that spoke about the recommendations, I want to echo that as well about the confusion. And for instance, when I look at this proposed task force recommendations, and I think it was listed either on the website or the agenda as this being the penultimate draft of your recommendations. So this is like it. That's the way I read that. And the very first one, and of course, you all know, and I've been here before you, I represent Mr. Rutch Richardson and a number of property owners in the Millington growth area. And the very first draft recommendation says, because the town of Millington said they didn't like something, we're not doing it. And I'm really oversimplifying it. And we provided testimony and information and just pointed out to the task force. I mean, this is dated May, this recommendation. Since then, there's been a town election. There's been a 3-day planning workshop up in Millington about the growth area. There's been testimony. And this is still the same. And it kind of jumps right out at you at the very beginning, because as was previously said by Ms. Williams, you have two designated growth areas, Wharton and Millington. And the very first recommendation says, no, the town of Millington expressed some misgivings and we're not going to do any of this. We know from conversations with the town that that sentiment has changed or evolved. And I hope at some point that'll be addressed. So I just don't know when this is going to be put out and said, these are our recommendations. We really want to hear how you feel. I mean, I've had to speak to this one now 3 times because I don't understand. And I'm concerned that if I don't keep saying it, there's going to be a meeting where this is adopted and people are going to say, well, didn't you? So, and then you go to the second one and this talks about truck stops and things. And when you read it, it says, because the town of Millington said they're not supportive, we're not doing this. Now, this is the Kent County Zoning Upgrade Task Force. This is to look at the whole county. I'm sure there are people that may consider these uses in P5, truck stops, gas sales, not just around Millington, but all over the place. I know for a fact of people that own property, not in Millington, but near Millington on 301, and this is an issue. So I guess to clarify on this one, I know you want to respect local government input, municipality input, but on the issue of truck stops, truck parking lots, gas sales, convenience stores, and restaurants with or without drive-through, you're relying on the comments of the town of Millington. And again, from back in May. So I just want to speak to those. And again, sort of the general layout of the process. When do we get to see, like, where are the actual task force voted by a majority recommendations? And if that's not for 6 months, then fine. But we keep seeing this document and it's a little disconcerting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Yes, go forward.
Tom Mason, 23991 Military Road, Chestertown. And I believe you probably all know what I'm going to address. And I'm trying to put this in a way that I'm using fictitious names and it's not a real case at all. But I'm hoping everyone will keep their minds open and just see what this 10% rule can do. Bill and Sarah are owners of a 180-acre farm in Kent County. Bill started dairy farming with his father